In this interview, I spoke to Mohamed Elkawafi, who is the Vice President of the Rouleaux Club. We covered a lot of topics in this conversation. We spoke about what it's like to be a trainee and the different cultures in different teams. We chatted about what is banter and where does banter cross the line. We spoke about how one's own attitude and approach makes a difference, even with difficult individuals. We started by discussing one or two of the interviews that I've already recorded, particularly one with Thanos Sarapsis. So if you haven't heard that recording, I thoroughly recommend it.
So there's a lot of deep reflection, I think, from
Yes.
these different interviews. Like the idea that different mindsets from different areas of practice. So saving the life in theatre does not have to be the same decisive decision making in every step of your career or every area, so you
Mm.
can't have that mindset, which is, it was one of those things that you think about, but I'd never thought how to put it in words. Every area, you can't have that same mentality of I'm in charge and therefore I'm not accepting any conversation at this moment in time. And I think that's as Thanos, well put it in words that doesn't make a good quality patient care going forward, and it doesn't give that idea about getting the team on board, and actually from a trainee point of view, it feels that if you have that idea and your trainer is in that way, you don't feel like you are developing as a person because you may suggest things which at times are correct or at times wrong, but you want to capture that good behavior and re-emphasize and say, that's a good idea, well done, or actually, that wasn't a good idea. And this is the reason why.
Mhm.
And I always think about it back to Thomas Fogarty, who made one of our surgical instruments that I used until now. And this person came up with it when they were a medical student.
Mm.
But medical students don't take on ideas and take them forward. Someone saw that and said, "Oh, that's a good idea." There must have been a good culture of thinking, "Okay, this person's idea, no matter what grade they are, they're all valid to speak. They're all valid to think and challenge the concepts." And that's how innovation and that's how good culture and good workplace development happens because you're taking on board everyone else's ideas rather than stuck in one way that is always the right way and or my way and or the highway kind of
Yeah,
concept.
absolutely. And anybody who's working in these teams that seem to be really great places to work, they seem to have that culture.
You go to different rotations, so we go to different units and we see different practices, and there's different ways of doing things. Not necessarily one is better than the other, or some things that work better in someone's hand, they're suitable for that individual, and they're not suitable for me.
Mhm.
And I haven't got that skill level to replicate that specific move or technique. But when you move on to another trainer and they say, "Oh, actually, no, this is the wrong way to do it," well, there's another person who's done this for 20 years and
Having
they've
great
got
success with it.
results, or yeah, exactly. So but that's the kind of way of approaching this kind of differences in practice from a trainee point of view, is that, oh yeah, that's a good idea, but this is my way, and why don't you learn something new rather
Mhm.
than undermining different experiences, and we need to move away from that paternal relationship. We're all adults. We've got families, we've got children, and we're not in school. We're not in the schoolyard anymore. We're not in that kind of way of I know better, and
Mm.
therefore it needs to move away from that. I feel like there's lots of effort going into medicine and training and surgery that things are moving towards a relationship where people go, okay, where are you at the moment? Let's move you up from this position, rather than let's teach you how to wash your hands again.
Yeah.
That kind of micromanagement kind of style of training.
So, one thing I want to ask you about is something that somebody else actually said to me who isn't a vascular surgeon, but a surgical trainee. And she said she's done a rotation in vascular. And she said, "Oh, I can really understand why people in vascular surgery are more stressed or more abrupt." Someone else has said this to me as well, "Oh, well, vascular, I wouldn't want to be a vascular surgeon. It's so high pressure." So therefore you can see why they're like this, why they might snap, why they might be bullying people, why they might be speaking to people in these, unpleasant ways. And that's really interesting to me that it's kind of being justified almost by people that it's happening to. And of course, yes, vascular surgery is probably more intense and life-threatening than hand surgery. But does that mean that that behavior has to happen, is necessary? Clearly not, as far as I can see, because there are teams where it's not happening. So I'm
Uh,
curious what you think about that.
my thing is, I agree with you that it's not really something that has to happen because of the surgical field. Every every specialty has a very high risk critical moment. Whether and I can pick an operation in every, even in hand surgery, I'm sure there is critical moments where if you don't do the right technique, it could cause to losing a hand or losing a finger or losing something. So there's lots of high stakes in every specialty. I think it's more of, from my experience, I've worked with trainers who go into the most critical steps and they have to be the person who first lets you do something, or there's a specific steps where they give you that first time, experience. And I think it's more about how they approach it, where they approach it in a way that conversation a couple of days before, oh, you're with me in theatre, we're going to do this. Have you done this X part before? Okay, and then you're going to be doing that. Can you prepare yourself? What do you think? So they actually judge your prior experience before going on and taking that leap with you. And then on the day, it's all discussed before. So on the table, there is none of this. When the emotions are high, there's none of the things that when things go a little bit wrong, you avoid these kind of negativities. And it feels like the easiest operation because everything's quite smooth, everything's right. And even if there's a complication, they look at you and go, "Oh, what are you going to do about it?" And they give you that space to grow, and then they're happy to take over because they are, they are anticipating a problem and they see how you react as well. So it's all part of the training, and it avoids these kind of things. And I've certainly been in these situations many of times because every step of the way, you take that next step to learning a new technique. I don't think it's just because it's a vascular surgery specific thing, because what I see is that every single person, whether they're a new consultant or an older consultant, they had to go through the same things. So they had to be trained, and we all had to do things for the first time in our life. And if we approach every single thing with that level of, oh, if you have to do this in this exact way, it's not going to be, you can't put ultimatums on every single step of the operation. You have to be precise, you have to be, decent, but there is ways to kind of mediate that. And I've had lots of examples of different ways of judging previous experience, knowing how to ascertain, giving feedback prior to this. I'd suggest you read about this, so that you come in with the theoretical knowledge, you come in with knowing the scans. There's preparation steps, but then on the day it makes it more relaxed rather than coming into the theatre and then getting shouted at, for
Yes,
example. Because well, why didn't you do that? Because that's just based on assumptions that we've both assumed that we are in the same level or the same step or the same page, but there's clearly that's not there.
absolutely. You've expressed that so well. Just the fact that somebody's there to step in, that you're obviously doing something for the first time. Of course, it might not go perfectly. And that's part of training, is that somebody might take over from you if it's not going how was expected.
Absolutely.
And then they'll talk to you about that afterwards and what you could do differently. So isn't it extraordinary that there are still places where people are shouting at each other, because it's so obvious that that's unhelpful in the moment and damaging to, the process of learning, because that's,
Absolutely.
as you've described, the normal process of learning, isn't it?
Yeah, and as a trainee, I have to put my hand up and say we have to take responsibility for our learning as well, and we have to, we have to be balanced. We can't. We're not expected to be spoon-fed. You have to take responsibility by preparing, by understanding and doing everything you can. One good method of thinking about it is an operating theatre. If you're going to see a theatre play, you don't come and watch the actors practice in front of you. They don't practice things in front of you. They go and perform. So they practiced before that. So things that you can do at home, suture, learn the material, learn the anatomy, look at the scans, all this preparation that your boss has already done, you are expected to do that. If you haven't done that, then you can't expect much and you can't complain afterwards that you haven't had the chance to do anything.
Hmm.
Because you have to do the steps that is your responsibility. And as you want it to be treated as an adult, you have to do the things that a professional has to do. But
Yes.
I think people don't understand these. I think lots of people come in with different expectations. And
Trainees.
yeah, trainees sometimes they might expect to just go ahead and do it, but they're not told or they don't have this idea that hang on a second, I think you need to prep. And lots of people, when they receive that feedback, they will do it. They will go, oh, I didn't know I need to do that.
Mm.
Oh, actually,
That's interesting in itself, isn't it? Because why didn't they know? Maybe it wasn't made clear. So there may be a gap in the explanation, the training there, or it may be that they just didn't do what they were supposed to do.
hmm,
But it sounds like that there could be some assumptions going on there on the part of some trainers of, well, obviously you've got to do the background. And, I shouldn't have to tell you, well, I agree. Of course, you're not there to be spoon fed, but to set that up at the beginning of, this is my responsibility as your trainer, but this is your responsibility. That sounds very helpful.
yeah, I think it needs to be balanced from both sides.
Hmm.
And I think as coming to the near the end of the training, I feel like I'm more aware of everything else going on as well. So there is urgencies of the cases, there's complexities that I don't know about, but I know about now. I've seen many things go wrong, and some things are salvageable, some things are not. So there are certain points where, like, for example, last year I would say I would be given an opportunity, a certain opportunity, and I feel like I'm not there yet. I
Hmm.
can't do this bit. For the patient's specific outcome and for the patient's best interest, I I'm not at that skill. I need to practice a bit more outside. So I'll
Hmm.
say, I think maybe you should do this bit because, and I think I need to practice a bit more on a more straightforward thing. And that's a judgment call.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to have that idea that I can't do that or
Hmm.
leave it. And then another concept is I've done this 20 times. I need to see some other people doing it in a different way, and
Hmm.
therefore I watch. So I've gone from the area where I've watched and then I've done, and then now I want to watch a bit more so that I can pick up what I don't know how, if I know how to do something, I'll do it one way,
Yes.
but I need to see
Variations or nuances
yeah,
as well.
variations of nuances. Yeah, absolutely.
And just going back to something you were saying earlier about as a trainee, if you've come in and you're not prepared, so you're not really ready to do this procedure, whatever you've been asked to do, that strikes me as the kind of moment when somebody might shout at you. But is
Hmm.
that ever, is that ever justified? It still doesn't seem very
No,
helpful to me.
it's very obvious that you're not prepared. I must say it's not something that you can hide behind because I think it's quite clear that as the conversations and the discussion about the case happen, you will be obviously, but at that point you have to discuss the approach and discuss things. And personally, I haven't been shouted at.
Mhm.
That kind of situation, I haven't been shouted at, or but at the same time. I've been told I'm expecting that level of degree of preparation. For example, in vascular procedures, about 80% of the operation happens at home in front of the computer. And especially with stenting and stuff like that, you have to prepare your thought process about what wires and what this and then when the consultant turns around and says, "Okay, what's your plan in terms of wire this or what's the stent size?" And I go, I didn't think about that, and they have thought about it. Well, that's a learning point for me. That's something I need to do.
Mm.
And do I know how to use the workstation to measure things appropriately or not? And then that's another step. So, okay, I need to sit down and look at these things and actually spend some time in that specific point rather than thinking about the operating theatre and what happens in that space.
So it sounds like you, throughout your training, you've been in environments that you feel have been supportive of you and of your development.
Yeah, mostly I think we're all humans and we have bad days and good days, and we have to think: is that person having a bad day or not? What I've found as well is most people are helpful,
Mhm.
and I've been told this as well throughout my training. And I'm sure everyone says the same thing to people at different stages, but sometimes they store that information and sometimes they forget it, and some things stay with you. So someone said to me, most people are helpful. Most people are want you to succeed, and most people feel like a sense of reward when they see people grow. And that's going to be throughout your career. People who don't, or people who seem to you at that specific point that are not helping you, you just have to take them out of the equation, and they're the minority. So think about the positivity and the bigger picture. Focus on that 90% of people that are helpful rather than starting to worry about the 10%.
Mm.
Yeah, that's how I think about it.
Well, that's very interesting. Obviously, as a coach, I'm really interested in how the way people think about things affect their experience.
Absolutely.
Because you showing up like that with well, people are basically helpful. Oh, he's having a bad day is a very different mindset from, okay, I'm going into battle every day against these people who are basically trying to get in my way. And, oh, you said that thing to me, therefore, and it's just a very different way of experiencing life from possibly the same circumstances.
And I feel like I experienced this point or this thought at the beginning of my training when I was a core trainee, where in the environment of my peers, people would say, "Oh, I've done X, Y, and Z. I've done this. I've done that." What they think they've done, or what they say or label done, is a different thought process. So, um, for example, if I've done a whole operation or I've done an appendicectomy from start to finish, sometimes they might have done part of it and they will say I've done it, but
Mm,
then someone else will think, oh, why is that person X doing all this and I'm not having the same experience?
mhm.
And then that kind of puts a negative person, or a negative thinking on their experience or expectation. So they come in expecting I have to do this or I should do this. And then if I don't get the same experience, then I feel disheartened, whether
Yeah.
in a negative way of, well, am I not good enough, or in a way of I'm treated unfairly.
Mhm.
These are the kind of emotions that people go through. And actually, when you look at the facts that I looked at, is that actually people don't get to do that because I'm more senior now, and the people do parts of the operation or share parts of the operation, or you have a modular learning where you do part of it and someone else does another part, and then you develop later on to doing it from the
Yeah.
start to the
So
finish.
all of that disgruntled thinking that you could have gone through would all have been based on a misunderstanding.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a misunderstanding of a statement
Mm,
in different social settings or different
yes.
meetings or different places where people come together and say, or out of pride, sometimes people say, "Oh, I do so and so, and I do this,"
Yes. Yes.
and they might have done these things, but you
With
don't know.
support or
But there's variations in practice as well.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
uh, for example, if you've been to a unit that does thoracic outlet, you will learn how to do thoracic outlet. If you have worked in places where they don't do
Mm,
thoracic outlets, you will have not learned that, and that's not part of an essential thing in the
yeah.
curriculum of vascular surgery. And it doesn't mean that you're a better trainee or a worse off trainee. It's just that that's how you've experienced. And
Mm,
we have a problem with open aneurysms now. If you work in a place where there's lots of open, you would have been a good open operator. If you have worked in a place where they don't do much open and they do a lot of endovascular, you will develop that. But if you go to the unit that does less open and complain that you haven't done many opens,
Yeah.
then it makes it thinking, well, focus on the endovascular because they've got lots of that, and then focus on what they have,
Yes.
and vice versa on the other place.
So, it's so valuable what you're sharing, because what you're basically talking about is having a positive attitude and looking for the positives in what's happening rather than looking for the negatives. And it's such a kind of simple idea, really. It sounds, it's so kind of almost trite, oh, be positive. But actually, you can see from those examples you've given, there's so much in it, because once you're dissatisfied and looking for fault, you're not focusing on what you could be learning.
Yes, and I feel like I don't like to undermine people by saying be positive. It's how to be positive. I feel like it's the right way to put it.
Pointing them to the
Yeah,
ways in which they can
pointing to the
be.
positivities. For
Yeah.
example, when COVID was working out, um, every single person, as a surgical trainee, or most people went and said, "Oh, well, we're not getting an operation. We're not doing things. We're not doing this." Every supervisor meeting went like that. My supervisor meeting, I said, "Well, oh, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm just looking at non-operative things. What can I do while I'm not doing an operation? I know this is low, and I can't influence that part, and that's out of my control. What can I do as a non-operative side of things?"
Mm. Yeah.
And focus on that side of things,
Mm.
and see what can be achieved. There's going to be things that you're not going to achieve. There's going to be things that you're not going to reach. Not everyone becomes the CEO of Microsoft or Tesla. You have to think this is life, and I'm going to reach a certain point, and I'm going to make the most of what I have, and
Mm.
try and do my best. And there's going to be negative things. There's things that I'm not very good at, so I'll have to accept that.
But even in what you said, there's this assumption that it's better and you would be happier if you were the CEO of Microsoft, which isn't necessarily true either. That, you working to your strengths and doing the bits that you really enjoy, that's in a way what's going to make your career the most fulfilling.
Yes.
But it's easy to get into these sort of, it's a competitive field, isn't it? So
It,
obviously it's easy
it,
to start to think
It,
that way.
it is, and one of the things that I feel like sometimes makes things a bit more stricter, or sets there's targets. As a trainee, you go to a place that is not very familiar with you, and you have a target of achieving X number of operations. You're achieving X number of things, and you're achieving these certain operations, and at a certain level. And if you don't achieve that, then there's going to be a conversation with you at the end of the year. But these targets are not easy. They are challenging because it requires a certain effort. But these targets have to be known between two people, the trainer and the trainee,
Hmm.
and they need to get you to that speed. And the trainee needs to know what they have to do to reach that level in a certainty.
Yes, yes. So as you said earlier, it's your responsibility as well as their responsibility. It's a joint.
Yeah, so definitely a shared one. And I like to share positive examples. So one of the places like where I worked in Manchester, where there's sometimes north of 90 patients as an inpatient, there's a phone that rings, and you're covering more than probably 16 plus spoke sites. So we have a centralized service where you're based in Manchester MRI, and you cover the Greater Manchester area.
Mhm.
And the phone keeps ringing about different referrals and different things, and you have to deal with it. But we all liked the place. We all liked to go there. We all liked the culture. We all liked to go into work. On paper, it sounds like why am I going to this? This is the worst place to work. But actually, there's lots of things, lots of positive things
So
that
what is it that makes the difference? What is it that makes that potentially difficult environment a great one to work in?
Well, lots of good examples of leadership, very good example of people who are in the positions of leadership. So managers knock on our door. How can we make things easier for you? What can we do for you? They will volunteer to do these emails to the patient. They will call the patient and say, "Oh, yes." They don't come in and give you jobs to do. It's all shared conversations. the hierarchy is as flat as possible, and it's actively flattened by the consultants. And these kind of ways of conversations, it's very obvious in the multidisciplinary team meeting. So in the MDT, everyone sits around the table, senior and junior and registrars, and everyone's able to lift up their hand and say, "This is what I think," and everyone's listened to, and they have a weekly kebab rota. So a consultant has to, whoever the consultant of the week is, buys kebabs for everyone.
Mhm.
Uh, and it's just a small gesture. Everyone eats and talks about the cases, and it's a positive environment. You're never undermined, and you're encouraged to talk. And that's something that's really, really positive. The ward round, you're given a task, there's no macromanagement because you haven't got time for it. Frankly speaking, you just have to trust people and you can't micromanage because you have to deal with your own thing. And pe people will feel that sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
You've given a task. Sometimes, if you don't achieve it, there's going to be some sort of consequence,
Hmm.
and we have to share it together. And that kind of way of thinking of, if I micromanage every single person in my team, then I'm going to be a better doctor, or the outcomes are going to be better. It actually isn't, because it's not going to be a positive culture. People don't feel trusted,
Mm.
and therefore they don't want to go and do the better thing. But
Mm.
if you feel like you've not got a spotlight on you, instead of doing one task, you'll do 20 more because you feel, oh yeah, because of that, I've done X, Y, Z, because you felt I've got the power and the initiative, I've been given this trust,
Yeah.
and I can still thrive in that environment.
That's
So
such an important point that you made, because that is why people micromanage, isn't it? Because they think they're going to get better outcomes as a result. So your experience of just, actually seeing that in action, that by stepping back, by just allowing people, giving them the responsibility, and they have to rise to it and presumably ask for help if they
yes,
aren't managing it, leads to these much, much better outcomes. And I think that's such a helpful thing to hear, because if someone is micromanaging, it's because they don't believe that, they don't trust that. So to hear from you, well, no, that is what happens. It's very
um,
helpful.
and one other thing is that I think I've seen it is that people in the leadership positions, whether they're clinical lead, or whatever your leadership position is, whether you're the registrar of the week and you've got the group of SHOs and F1s and things like that. There's lots of things that you can't influence. I can't influence when is the scan going to happen.
Yeah.
So you can ask the question, but you have to say, well, I can't influence that. The Once you get into that kind of thinking of, I want this done now, but actually none of your team or you can do that, based on there's other limitations in different departments, or there's another person who has to come and do it, or there's another specialty involved, or then offloading that responsibility on one person in your team, another resident doctor, and them thinking that they failed because they couldn't get the scan on time, even though they don't press the button for the scan, is not helpful. They've asked the question, and that's it. They've tried their best,
Yeah.
and that's all they can do. However, the opposite is asking them to go and be another person or another version of, they go and shout at places, or they go to another department and think that the correct behavior is to shout or be this, or some sort of decisiveness that is not right, and then that just backlashes on them and on the department, and then that breaks relationships rather than build them up and gives them the wrong idea. And that's why I learned over the time that I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was going in and doing the right thing by saying this, or being decisive, or
Trying to
I'm
force the
a
issue.
leadership. Yeah, I'm a leader because I'm going in and saying to people, no, you have to do this now for me, and this is the end of this. But no, but actually, I didn't get things done quicker or easier. No, it was more of the other approach of, let's
Mm.
build a relationship, and actually, what I learned as a role model in that certain position was not the right thing. And
Mm. Mm. So
actually, the role model.
what does make a great leader in that sort of situation where things don't necessarily go how you want them to?
I think it's more about sharing that responsibility rather than pointing fingers, not having that idea of I'm gonna sit down and point a finger at that person, and also seeing a colleague or a person leader, seeing the positives as well. Again, so personal conversation, like personal example for me, is when I've there was a mistake in some sort of clinic letter. My boss fixed the mistake, contacted the patient, and it was all fine. It was a small mistake about who they lived with, for example,
Hmm.
and uh, and it was all rectified and it was all fine. I didn't know about it.
So you'd made a mistake.
Yeah, I made a mistake,
Hmm.
and this was all rectified,
Yes.
and I didn't know about it.
Uh-huh.
And the the only way it came about in a conversation was that I was asking this person about, oh, what makes this place great and how do you make it positive and stuff like that. And they mentioned this. They said, well, if I started, and this was months and months later,
Yes.
and near the end of my rotation, and they said, well, if I start picking on every single thing that you do wrong, or every small thing that
Yes.
is not, of course, you're human, you're going to make some mistakes. But
Yeah.
I can't micromanage every part of, oh, your shoelaces are not done. Oh, you can't do this. Oh, you haven't
Yeah.
done that. Oh, you're walking up,
Yeah.
if you start, this is not feedback. This is just hammering the person. And
Yes. Yeah. 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 It's just sort of venting your irritation, isn't it, really?
yeah, and
Yeah. So
that
picking the things that are actually
what's
important,
important. Yeah,
significant, and from which you'll learn, rather
absolutely.
than yeah.
And that gave me a positive thinking about moving that forward. Of thinking, well, people are different. We're all different. We come from different backgrounds. We sound different. Culturally, it's a very diverse workforce, the NHS, and people have language barriers. People have language, intonations. My first language is Arabic,
Yeah.
and it's not English. And my intonations or the way maybe I deliver something might sound different. And it's these kind of things that make things when you talk, they might mean the word rather than the way they said it. And you have to take that into context rather than take it out of context and be picky about small things. You just have to be considerate. I think that's the main thing.
Yes, and that's so interesting because I think what I see in that is it's easy to pick up on other people's things because they annoy you, for example, rather than because they're actually a problem. And I think that's another reason why one of the things I love to talk to people about is understanding yourself and knowing that that reaction doesn't mean this person needs to learn more or is a poor trainee. That's just your thing about you find people with accents annoying. Well, that's your problem. That's nothing to do with them. And so stop making it to do with them. You need to own that and deal with that yourself. That's an inside job. It's not something that can ever be fixed outside of you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you just have to, and sometimes this is the way it is.
Mm,
You're working with, you have to work with what you have
yeah.
and try your best. And we're all part of a system, and we are not controlling every part of the system. When we can't appear to have controlled every part of the system.
No, we shouldn't
Uh,
aspire to.
no, no, and you have to share that with your colleagues. I think the more people share that, oh, I can't do this. Oh, this is going to be a challenge. And I've seen it in different places. Well, we have to get this patient into theatre now. Well, oh, there's X, Y, and Z challenge. Therefore, I can't do that. I tried,
Mhm.
and that's the end of that. And you
Yeah.
try your best. That's it's all
Yes.
about it.
And that's great to hear you say that because I think that's one of the things that doctors in general find very difficult is kind of admitting that something can't be done or that they, or not now, or, I don't know. It's it's very unfamiliar territory. And for me, that alone would make an enormous difference to culture, just for that to be okay territory. I don't know. What do you think? This can't be done right now. Those kind of things, which sort of feels like you've been trained not to go there. Like, no, well,
No,
if it can't be done, no, that's not real. It must be me, or it must be the system, or it must be somebody else's fault, rather than just, yeah, right now, these things haven't appeared, haven't lined up from other departments. Therefore, it's not happening. It's a level of realism, I suppose, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you about when you were talking about your department and the sort of flat hierarchy and the supportive the nature of the managers who are kind of coming in and offering to take stuff off your plate rather than put it on your plate. And the question I wanted to ask you is, what if you're not working in a department like that? Because there's plenty of people who haven't got a good word to say about managers for a start,
Mhm.
and plenty of people who are working in hierarchies that just feel much more steep. And one of the things that I'm interested in this project is empowering people wherever they are in that
Mhm.
hierarchy to take responsibility for their part in creating culture, because I truly believe everybody is creating culture all the time. Now, obviously, these people who are throwing their weight around, who may be unpleasant, are having a huge impact. But I'm interested to hear what you think, whether these people, whether a junior doctor or a nurse in the department, you have got some influence over that, and what that might be.
Uh, it's very difficult, to be honest. It's such a sensitive thing for us to come into a place and have these established things, and then being there is 6 months and try and gain the most out of it.
Hmm.
And then we're all taught these things about keep your head down,
Yeah.
don't create noise.
Don't make a
If
fuss.
Yeah, don't make a fuss about it. It is what it is. They're always like this. What other things? They've been here for 25 years.
Hmm.
Don't ruin your career.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the other thing. So I think you just have to choose your battles. I feel like you have to think what is things that I can influence and what is things that I can't influence, and
Hmm.
priorities. I personally started thinking about something else different, which is I want to look after my own health
Hmm.
and my own well-being and my own blood pressure, I say. Uh, if something's going to rise my blood pressure and something that's going to, determine my own health and or cause me stress, then maybe it's worth not,
Hmm.
you know, I remove myself from that kind of thing, but making the concern also about an objective rather than a person. So uh, I think people are good in themselves, so not thinking about making it a personal thing rather than making it there is that certain part of behavior or there's certain idea or the certain situation that's been handled in the wrong way, and therefore thinking and focusing on one certain thing rather than thinking about a generic person
Hmm.
and avoiding the noise because people will go, oh yeah, so and so and so and so. Avoiding that kind of negative thinking of uh, the overall noise that happens around things, which chit chat and
Hmm.
gossip and things like that. They happen a lot, but uh, it's very challenging. These kind of situations, it's very very challenging. The easiest thing is to remove yourself.
And I hear a lot of people, more senior people saying, oh, well, the younger doctors just won't tolerate what we did. And so things have to change. So, the fact that there are so many of you and that you are speaking up more is important. And it is influencing things, maybe not as quickly as you would like, or as like you say, you can't just because you speak up or make a point, it doesn't mean it's going to be taken on board. But it's a sort of this is the rising tide, this is the flow of things in a different direction that is making a difference, even if it's only incremental, or you can't see it in your own day-to-day life immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like it's important to be balanced in these kind of situations. And my balance is always what's my responsibility
Mhm.
and look at your own self as well as the other person in front of you, and also education about the whole picture.
Mm.
Sometimes we think or we don't see the whole picture, and we have a small part of the information, and we act on that. But
Mm.
actually, there's a bigger picture around it, and you might not be privy to that information at
Yeah.
that point of view. And uh, there's lots of assumptions, and I think assumptions is a very dangerous thing to have. If
Dangerous territory.
you're very dangerous, isn't it?
But I think, what you were saying about, either there's this sort of sense that I hear from a lot of people of there are two extremes to this. Either you keep your head down, you say nothing, you don't make a fuss, you put up with sometimes terrible behavior, or you are speaking up, threatening your whole career, putting in a formal complaint. And it seems to me that there is an enormous amount of middle ground, and that's what I'm really interested in exploring. And us all as individuals creating culture doesn't have to be big acts. It can be just supporting your colleague who just got spoken to in an unpleasant way. It can be just saying something quietly. It's those kind of small acts that make a difference. Next time that person might think differently about making that comment. So I think it's these little incremental things suggesting ideas of what can we say. Someone was talking to me yesterday about, oh, the nurses, they try so hard to support us, they bring in cake. That's lovely. It's great that they bring in cake. But what if those nurses knew actually more sustainable and healthy ways of supporting those junior doctors than
Mm.
just bringing in cake? It's the intention is 100% there, but there are ways that they can just be different with those people that I think are helpful. And that's one of the things I'm really hoping to teach more about in this project.
Speaking about these comments, and it's quite interesting these comments because yeah, you hear them. These comments, you know, if they're meant in a funny way, you respond to them straight away in a funny way as well.
It's this line, isn't it, between what's banter and what isn't? And there's so many elements to that. There's the, like we was discussing earlier, just when you're looking at things positively, you're just like, oh, they're just being, it's just stupid banter, then that's fine. But if you are thinking differently and you're like, oh, I need to look good and I need to, you might take that banter differently. So we all need to kind of consider that in bantering. What's the culture here? What's our relationship already? Is it good enough that I can say this thing, or isn't it? And if it
Yeah,
isn't, then well, that's the thing that needs to be worked on, is the
yeah.
relationships.
But I think in the matter of banter and this kind of conversations and silly comments and things like the onus comes on the person who is delivering the comment. They have to judge whether this is appropriate or not.
Yes,
It's not
yes.
on the receiving person, which is usually the case where people think, oh, they took it the wrong way.
Oh,
No, it's
yes.
the responsibility of you delivering that comment on you judging your relationship with that person. Are they okay with it? Is that something appropriate? What's the line?
Yeah,
Because there's some things that are not
yeah,
acceptable
yeah.
anywhere
And
or
where are
any
you coming from
time.
as you say it? Because sometimes
Uh,
people do mean it to be undermining, or they
yeah.
mean it to be funny, and that makes a difference in itself. Yeah.
And also, just because you have a relationship with one person in a certain position doesn't mean that everyone else in that room has that relationship and they perceive it in a different way.
Yes.
Because, and suddenly, yeah, I'm friends with you, but you've said X comment in a group of people that are, we're not all friends from school. And
Yes.
therefore, there's an undermining element to it.
Yes.
And that's not right. And that's not a good, that's not a good way of communicating, definitely.
Mm.
Not a really good way to kind of take things forward.
Many, many thanks to Mo for this conversation, and thank you for listening. There are lots and lots of issues here. We covered a lot of ground. If there's something that you would like to take up and have a conversation with me about, then please do get in touch. Or if you've been affected by any of the things that we've discussed and you feel in need of support, then please feel free to reach out to me privately. If you've got any other ideas or suggestions for the Rising Tide project, then please let me know.